It's a bird. It's a man. It's a lovely girl. It's Florida. Land of tropical sunsets that provide golden halos for a colonnade of shrimp boats' masts. Land of clear blue mornings where the seabirds glide silently overhead on a whisper-smooth offshore breeze. Land of nature's magic where porpoises are fed by hand and young pelicans dig deep into that famous beak that holds food enough for a week.
Hi, my name is Jessica Basie, and I am a high school teacher. I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, grew up going down to the Keys with my family, and I feel very much at home on the water. I'll always have to be near the water. I was born and raised here, so hot, buggy, muggy doesn't bother me. I grew up, outdoors and appreciating what we have. And I guess my mom and my parents did that for me. So Jonah, I hope that I inspired him. I guess we'll see. Absolutely, one person can do so much. If there's any kind of tree or flora out there that can save the planet, it's mangroves.
Then there was a question of, do we go under or over? Now we go. More questions.
Mangroves are very unique when you first walk upon them. Red mangroves are incredible to see. Their root structure, their prop roots, are these tangled messes of stability. Red mangrove trees have sometimes been called walking trees because their prop roots look like these gnarly legs that are kind of walking into the water if you use your imagination. Their bark has a slight red or orange tint to them, and they're just beautiful.
So this is a red mangrove. It's the biggest, can tolerate the most saltwater submergence. It's also the preferred one for using for erosion control because of the big prop roots, binds the sediment very, very tightly.
Black mangrove trees are incredible as well. Their root structure is totally different. Black mangrove roots are similar to almost a cypress knee. They have these amazing roots that kind of come out of the ground like sticks.
Yeah, this is a black mangrove. The black mangrove gets rid of the salt and salt water through its leaves. This one can handle the most extreme temperature variation. So very hot, nasty weather like Florida Bay in summer. Sometimes it's just the black mangroves there. And they can also handle the coolest temperatures.
A lot of people don't realize they're important for a lot of different reasons, but they're so important, they're protected by law. Their root structures hold. They hold onto the sediment, they hold onto the sand, so they're a break. They're a break from the wind action, the water action, from hurricanes and strong storms.
They work their magic in so many ways, not just one way. It's not just, giving us oxygen. It's just, they're magical. The mangroves can protect against hurricane force winds. They stabilize sediment so they can prevent erosion, which in turn prevents flooding. So we definitely need more of them, but really this is where we have seen in the last 10 years, and of course people will disagree. We have to have these mangroves. Without these mangroves, our community is in great peril.
Climate change is something that Miami should care about, Florida should care about, and the entire world should care about. My name is Alex Harris. I'm the lead climate reporter of the Miami Herald. I cover the ways that South Florida is adapting to climate change or failing to adapt, And that involves everything from elevating homes and building new technology to investing in nature-based solutions like mangroves. Even if you don't live near the water, maybe your community will become a new home for people who used to. And if you ever like to go outside, you probably should care about climate change, because it doesn't just make the water levels higher, it makes it hotter outside. If you like going outside, you don't want it to get that much hotter. The number of hot days a year that it is unbearable to go outside, unsafe to do outdoor labor, or uncomfortable even just to walk from your car to your home or go wait for a bus are increasing. And if you live in a place where there are snowstorms, where there are wildfires, where there are potentially even tornadoes, those are other things that climate change can affect. And as we pump more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and thicken that blanket that is coating the earth and trapping in those heating gases, those number of days are going to go up and up and up and up. We are facing the risks of climate change. They are already a today problem for those of us in South Florida, because as the water gets warmer and as the sea levels are getting higher and saltier, we're seeing those mangroves move to new places they haven't been before. So they are a sentinel creature showing us the impacts and changes in the environment around us.
Get around the corner, it might get a little bumpy, but it won't be bad. At least I don't think it'll be bad. Can't see her very good from over here. She's checking us out though. This was right facing Hurricane Idalia, and a huge storm surge here, and it got the brunt of the wind, and you can see from the bluff behind me just the erosion of the bank and the trees that fell down. With sea level rise, you get higher vulnerability due to these storm events. So here you can see real evidence of the bluff just took it out. We estimate it took about 20 feet off this bluff and just caved it into the sea and left the beach here. So there's not a lot of mangroves right on this shoreline. On the other side of the island, there's lots of mangroves right along the shore. When I got here in the late 1990s, there was not that many mangroves in Cedar Key. Now it's pretty much a canopy of black mangroves all over the oyster bars and the coastal environment and the Keys here. But the interesting thing in the last 7 or 8 years is that the more truly tropical mangroves have come into this region. The red mangroves and white mangroves are all now very common in Cedar Key. As the climate warms and we have milder and milder winters, what we're seeing is that all kinds of taxa in this hemisphere are moving from the south to the north. They're a native species that's expanded their range up here.
Why they're coming here and why they're expanding their range, as it were, which is happening around the globe. In our area here in the east coast of Florida, it's because it's less cold. So in the wintertime, freeze events, hard freezes, which is a couple of days where the low temperatures get below, say, 28 degrees Fahrenheit or below 0 Celsius, those hard freezes would naturally keep mangroves out. In fact, they've been getting farther and farther apart over the last 30 years or so. Well, mangroves provide great fish and wildlife habitat. They store a lot of carbon. The woody root system stores organic carbon in marine sediments that are mostly anaerobic, and it's a long-term carbon store. So this is kind of like a negative feedback for climate change. As our atmospheric CO2 rises, all around the planet, mangroves are expanding in their range. And even if a cold freeze comes through and kills that tree, that carbon is still stored in the sediments and it'll stay there for a long time. And so this is one of nature's own fix-it mechanisms, you know. People aren't used to seeing woody plants growing in their shoreline, but the big picture is that it's a very positive event ecologically and environmentally.
If you talk to some people, you'd say it was good. If you talk to other people, you'd say it's a change that's not so good. It just depends on your perspective.
Like that, and it became a cutting-edge tool. I'm Bill Marquardt. I'm a retired curator of archaeology at the Florida Museum of Natural History, and I worked for a number of years in Southwest Florida, where I came to appreciate the story of the Calusa Indian people that we investigated there. Now, the Calusa people were primarily a coastal fishing people, and it really oriented their whole lives. They were oriented toward the tides and the changes in the seasons, the changes in the days. So the Calusa didn't have it so easy after all. They really had to use their heads. They had to change with the environment. So, as things get worse, for example, what are you going to do? Move away? Do you move to someplace else that's more hospitable? I guess our job then is to figure out how our culture can be resilient as well, because we face challenges. We face higher populations, water pollution and air pollution and things that we're making efforts to do something about. But if we're going to be resilient, to last on into the future, then we need to be very careful about how we interact with the environment. Since we have to continue to make decisions today, and we want to succeed, why shouldn't we learn from choices that people made in the past? I guess one of the takeaways from the Calusa story is that environment sometimes provides tremendous opportunities, but it also provides challenges too, and how we respond to those challenges can make the difference between survival and not, prosperity and not, and being able to continue to live in the same place or not.
For there is still so much room in which to grow, so many ways in which to grow, untapped reserves of natural resources and manpower, everything that today's industrialist expects and demands for his firm. This is Florida, the new industrial Florida.
This guy is going to make it. It's got some great roots, and I just put him in here the other day, and he didn't look like he was in great shape from the water, but they're just really so resilient and amazing. They were just the size of not much bigger than the ones that we have in the tanks currently, and I planted them about 3 years ago, and they're just really doing well. But so after...
When we moved into this house in April of 2020, my mom and I are big paddle boarders. We would go out on the canal and paddle, and as you do that, and especially once summer rolled around, we were collecting lots of mangrove propagules. We started planting them ourselves, growing them in tanks, growing them right on our property, everything. And so that's how mangrove life started, because eventually we had so many mangrove propagules growing in tanks that we needed something to do with them. So we always reach out to the city, we contact them, and they'll usually give us a planting spot, or we'll propose a planting spot and they'll give us clearance. It can go either way. And I will get emails from residents who are very concerned when they see, construction companies, engineering companies come out and remove mangroves, to build things like that. Even though they're protected, obviously, you can get permits, to remove them. It's definitely not top priority to be, holding on to these mangroves, the mangroves that we have left.
Fort Lauderdale's charm lies in the fact that, like Venice, it's a city of waterways. More than 165 miles of lagoons, canals, and rivers that encourage boating, all of them.
Dig a canal and it has some local effects, and quite another thing to get in with hydraulics and bulldozers and change something so radically. But when you build a large-scale subdivision where everybody wants to have a boat next to the water, then people buy these lots where they put their boat, and then they plant a lawn so that it looks just like it did in Ohio. And if you had set out to devise a more efficient way to destroy an estuary, you couldn't have done it.
Private residents are reticent about putting them, on their property. Oh, then I can't remove them, and oh, they're going to ruin my seawall, and it's just a lot of misinformation out there.
The homeowners probably aren't thrilled that you put down the trees now, and they're great, but they could be massive someday and totally obstruct views, or they don't want to bother with upkeep, or maybe they just don't know.
Permit is required to trim or alter any mangroves. So a successful permit, a key factor is the applicant knowing what they want. What do you want to get out of this? Do you want to trim your mangroves to have a view? Do you want to trim your mangroves for a dock? If there has been any illegal trimming, any unauthorized dock construction that may have resulted in impacts to the mangroves or other resources in the area, penalties up to $25,000 per violation.
So mangroves aren't just something that appears in public places like parks and gardens. They're also something that kind of naturally occurs along waterways in South Florida. And those waterways are not empty spaces, they are filled with houses, usually really, really expensive houses. And one of the problems we see down here in South Florida is, as we talk about mangroves as a solution, not everyone is fully bought in. Homeowners who don't like the fact that they impact their view, they don't like the fact that they cover their entire waterfront area so they can't fit in a boat dock or a little sandy beach to swim in the water, play with their kids, or launch a kayak. And often something we see all across South Florida, anywhere there's mangroves that meets homes, is that people will cut them down. When you do that, you are reducing the efficacy of those plants to protect us from storms or waves or whatever is coming our way. And there's not always a good response from code enforcement or from counties or from law enforcement to stop people from doing that. So we are losing a lot of the mangroves that we already have right now just due to people cutting them down because they don't like them.
I can remember one time I was kayaking with one of my granddaughters down the channel here, and the dolphins just came up and just went right along with us down the channel. It was beautiful. My name is Bob Mills, and I'm the president of the Wilbur Improvement Association. So we have this beautiful 1,000-foot-long stretch of coastline here that we are trying very hard to maintain. The experience that we went through a few years ago with the illegal cutting of our mangroves was an education in itself. We had always known that as the owner of the property, we had the ability to trim the mangroves back to 6 feet tall. But if they're over 10 feet tall at the time, you actually have to have somebody who's qualified do the cutting, and you have to pull permits. We knew that. A lot of homeowners, when they come in and build a house along our coast here, they just take it upon themselves to go ahead and cut them without any education, to know how important the mangroves are to the future of their own property. I would consider them the Florida tree. This is a symbol of Florida, and these trees actually function not only to help us have clean air, but to help us stabilize our land and protects our inland properties.
There should be mangroves anywhere where there's potential for flooding. And there just isn't. They just keep putting more like seawall or boulders or whatever, and it just doesn't really help. It just, you're creating a concrete environment where there should be nature.
There's hundreds and hundreds of miles of bad uses of seawalls because as these homes were built, a lot of them in the 1950s and 1960s, that's what builders did. They put in seawalls as they dredged out all of these canals off of our two major rivers down here are the Middle River and the New River. So there's seawalls everywhere.
Water that once ran wild, water that ruined the rich terrain, water that took lives and land, put disaster in the headlines and death upon the soil. Now, it just waits there, calm, peaceful, ready to do the bidding of man and his machines.
Mangroves are already here. They are an integral part of what this community is. And if our local leaders don't start realizing that it isn't about seawalls, it's about living shorelines, then it's going to get worse and worse.
They just think it's a plant, takes up space, blocks their view, just like a normal tree. But it's really quite the opposite. It's very, very important. I first heard about mangrove life in my AP psychology class. Miss Basie is my teacher. She asked us, her students, if we would be interested in paddleboarding around the canals, picking up trash. I knew about mangroves a little bit. We came on a Saturday. It was my first time coming, and we came probably around 8 more times after that.
This time of year, from around the first part of March until around July, there's just every evening there's a steady stream of birds, and it's a one-way street. They're coming from the mainland where they're feeding in the coastal marshes and freshwater marshes inland. They do use the black mangroves as nesting sites, and we've got brown pelicans here behind me that are that are actually look to be building nests or tending nests. We see ibis in them, but you also see roseate spoonbills in the mangroves, double-crested cormorants. Pretty much all the birds will use whatever they can find that can build a nest site on, but the black mangroves are a real bushy, lots of branches, and they can build a nest in there and be secure.
This is a yellowtail snapper that I made. One of the things that we find a lot are these skinny cigar plastic filters. I suspect people throw them out of their car windows. So we have literally removed thousands of these. So that was really the first inspiration. What can I do with these things? Oh my goodness, they look like fish scales if I put them like this. Yellowtail snapper, of course, is a species of fish that relies on the mangroves to thrive. The chart, as I sometimes call it, the trash into art, definitely just really started to happen about maybe a year ago, and I just kind of started playing around with the pieces. The magical mangroves they make me happy. That's it, really.
Right here we have some red mangroves that were placed as just little plants, and now they're maturing here. They're a good 6 to 7 or 8 feet tall. The mangroves now are up to about 10, 15 feet tall. I think they're going to remain that way.
If we're going to continue to live in Florida and have it prosper, then we need to understand how the environment works and try to protect it as best we can. I guess that's really the bottom line to me.
So we're here in Brittany Bay Park in Miami Beach. It's perhaps the best example in South Florida of a living shoreline project done right, which means that you have mangroves and also other natural plants, native plants, local plants, lining the shoreline. Instead of just a solid gray concrete seawall, you have a blend, you have a hybrid, you have nature and also concrete, gray and green. So we need those seawalls that are nice and tall and strong to defend us against those increasingly intense storms with the higher and stronger levels of storm surge they're bringing. But we also need those mangroves to do things like clean the water, but also holds on to that soil and stops a little bit of that sea level rise. It takes communities to actually say, this is what we want. If your city or your county or your village isn't doing something like a living shoreline, you want it to happen, you as a citizen have the voice to ask for it if that's what you would like to see on your coast. I think when people think about climate change, they think about it as a problem that has to be solved at the national, global level. We have to sign some sort of treaty. We have to globally slash our emissions. We have to do a lot of things that a small resident or a commissioner at a small town doesn't have much power over. But here in Miami, we've learned that that's not true at all. There are a lot of small changes we have to make this a livable future for everyone and make it an equitable future for everyone. And if Miami, which has been doing this for about 5 to 10 years, isn't doing it fast enough, then my message to the rest of North Florida is start now. We have to learn to live with the water. We have to learn to live with the mangroves.
People in coastal North Florida especially need to be ready for the water and king tides to be in their backyards. They need to be ready to have to look at that and think to themselves, I should have done something. And so when it comes to them being ready for mangroves, you better be ready because it's a big solution. It's not going to fix every problem related to sea level rise, but they're going to do a lot.
One word to describe mangroves. Fascinating? Incredible? Astonishing? I don't know. One word is hard.
Resilient?
Magical.
As my wife likes to say, magical.
Community.
Extraordinary. Imperiled.
Essential.
Change. You nailed it. Man, I've got a career. I think I could do this.